Australia, once seen as the lucky country. But today, many people are starting to ask the question, is Australia in managed decline? We've got rising taxes, growing government control, a cost of living crisis. Is this a downturn, or is something deeper and more structural going on here? In this video, we're going to take a look at what is managed decline and is Australia in it. Now, we're not necessarily saying that Australia is in managed decline, but what if it was? And there certainly is a growing chorus of people discussing this online. So whether you might think that this is a conspiracy or not, why do people think this might be happening? There's usually a reason behind it. Let's look at some of those reasons why people think that Australia might be in managed decline. So let's take a look at some of the things that are happening in Australia right now. We've got real wages that are stagnating while inflation continues to bite. Yes, inflation has come back down into the RBA band of between 2 and 3%, but prices aren't going back to where they were 3 years ago. These price rises are baked in. Prices are still going up, but they're not going up as fast as they were going up. And then there's questions about how this 2 to 3% inflation rate, the CPI rate, is measured. That's a discussion for another video altogether because the method of calculation has been tampered with over the years. But the fact of the matter is, even by using the RBA statistics, prices are 20 to 30% higher than they were a few years ago. Some things have gone up a lot more than that. And real wages, which is the wage you take home after factoring in inflation, has not kept up with price rises. So pretty much everyone, the vast majority of the population, is worse off than they were 3 years ago. We have property prices that are unaffordable for pretty much all younger generations and actually any generation. No matter how old you are, if you're a have-not, if you don't have property, you're going to have a very hard time of trying to get into the market. It is very hard to find a rental. It is common knowledge, doesn't matter what economist you talk to, that there are supply issues with housing that is contributing to prices being so high and rents as well being very high. At the same time, the government continues to bring in record numbers of immigrants when there just is not housing available for the people that are already here. Why are they doing that? At the election that took place in May 2025, both political parties brought housing policies to the election that were basically demand driven. They were designed to push up demand without seriously addressing the main root cause of the property price issue, which is supply. When supply stays the same and demand goes up, that is economics 101. That means that prices will go up in an already unaffordable property market. There's more to the property issue as well, such as high regulations, zoning, etc., cost of building, union involvement, a whole range of things, but you would have to say supply is the main issue. Tax burdens are rising on the middle class. You work hard, you save, you invest, you follow the incentives to invest, putting your money where the government incentivizes you to put your money, and then the goalposts move. You've put all this money into an asset that was told by you that it's good, it's going to save you tax, it's going to be good for your future, and then essentially the rug is getting pulled out from under you. Yes, I'm talking about superannuation, but it's not just that. There's whispers taking place about sort of taxes on wealth, inheritance, and income tax, capital gains, tax exemptions, a lot of stuff. There's no talk about taxes going down. I'll correct myself, there has been a little bit of talk about reducing the corporate tax rate as recommended by the Productivity Commission, but as far as individuals go, taxes are generally going in a one-way direction, and that is up. Red tape is choking small business. Small business is the engine room of the economy. They do most of the hiring. If you punish the people that provide jobs, there won't be jobs for the general populace. They provide an integral role to the economy. You need to make it easy on the people that feed the economy, and small business is part of that. If they can invest, if they can hire without it being an administrative headache or getting caught up in all kinds of work cover issues, union issues, not having the ability to adapt your workforce to the volume of the work on hand, like having a casual workforce on hand and not being punished for that. It is not easy to be a small business owner with employees in Australia. We have GDP growth, that when you look at the official figures, yes, it is going up. That's in nominal terms. That includes inflation, and it also includes the increase in population. When you look at GDP per capita, which is a much more accurate representation of the standard of living of each and every Australian, that has been going down for I think a couple of years, for quite a while. Australia has been in a per capita recession. So yes, the size of the whole pie of the economy has gotten bigger. The size of each slice of the pie that I get, that you get, that your neighbour gets, that has gotten smaller for everyone because the economy has not grown fast enough to keep up with the record amounts of immigration. What has kept the GDP moving forward has been largely public sector growth in the economy. So public servants, what they call now the health economy, which pretty much when they talk about that, they're talking about the NDIS and the rorting and scams that are attached to that. Well-intentioned, yes, but rorting and being scammed, absolutely as well. Currently, we have this sort of big government mindset, a pro-welfare state mindset. Having a big public service is not good for the economy. It means more bureaucracy, more rules, more regulations for everyone, and that means it's harder to do anything. It's more expensive to do everything. And it means that the real economy, the private sector, the part of the economy that actually grows productivity in a country's economy, that is being starved out by people being attracted to the public service where productivity is a lot lower. If you want a good, healthy economy across the country, you need to have a very healthy, growing and productive private sector. Private sector growth and productivity is very important. And we just don't have any of that. All of the investment is going into the public sector at the moment. We've got social unrest in the country. There's tension in the community. Issues that are taking place in other countries are spilling over into the streets of Australia. At the same time, nothing is being done to alleviate these tensions in the community. It gets talked about a lot, or a bit, but nothing is actually being done to address it. And you could even say that some of the policies at hand are making it worse. As a result of all of these things, and I'm sure many things as well that I haven't even mentioned here, a growing number of Australians are leaving permanently. These aren't isolated issues, they're signals, or at least you could think of them as signals. Signals of a country that may be in slow and perhaps deliberate decline. That is the question we are looking at here. So what is managed decline? Well, it's not a collapse, it's not chaos, it's a slow bleed. It describes having policies and regulations in place that protect the system, not so much the citizen. The policies and regulations are designed to concentrate power and not create opportunity for the everyday man or woman. It's when governments make decisions that quietly undermine productivity. You could say that is happening. Discourage entrepreneurship. You can say that is happening. And disincentivize wealth creation. You can definitely say that is happening as well. Often these policy changes will be sold to the general population under the guise of fairness or for your safety. So is managed decline in Australia intentional? Again, we're not saying necessarily it is intentional or it's not intentional. We're just looking at some of the reasons why some people do believe that it may be intentional and to give people a bit of something to think about. So ask yourself, why is the government growing larger every year? We've got the biggest public service per capita that we've had in, 30 or 40 years, quite a long time. So the government keeps getting bigger while the standard of living declines. And you can also ask yourself, what is the role of government? Was government invented to tell us exactly how to live, that we can do this, we can't do that, we can do that, but we need to have a permit for that? Or was government invented to provide basic services, roads, infrastructure, health, education, police, etc., and maybe a basic safety net? What is the purpose of government? Why are productive citizens taxed more while accountability drops? What I'm talking about here is generally in a tax system, or at least in Australia's tax system, it is the lifters that pay for the leaners. And that's fine. People that have a capacity to pay are generally happy to pay a bit more tax because maybe they're better off than their neighbour who doesn't have the capacity to pay. But you can't push the lifters to the point where they feel that they're not getting a fair deal, especially in this day and age when it is very easy to relocate overseas into a fairer tax system where you are welcomed rather than punished. You push the lifters too far and they're going to leave. Look at what's happening in Britain at the moment with the change to inheritance tax and non-dom changes and all of that. A lot of millionaires are leaving there. The same will happen in Australia if the lifters get pushed too far. And on the subject of funding a tax base for a country, here are some stats that you will rarely see in the media. The top 10% of taxpayers are already paying nearly half of the total tax take in Australia. So if you're in the top 10%, you're paying for not quite half of the general population already. The bottom 50%, they're paying about 11 or 12%. So the bottom 50% of taxpayers are already heavily subsidized by the top 10%. This is when most of the narrative in the media is all about tax the rich, the wealthy aren't paying enough, etc., etc. Everyone has seen that. Well, this is how things already are. The top 10% are already paying for the bottom 50%, and the bottom 50% aren't paying much at all, around 11 or 12%. I'm not saying here that we don't need a basic social safety net. Every healthy society does, but these are just the facts. And it is very handy to understand these things every time you read an article in the media about people not paying their fair share. They're already paying a hell of a lot. If Australia is such an attractive place to invest and be and live and everything, why is capital and people fleeing to other countries that have more freedom and less regulation? There's that old saying, capital flows to where it's treated best. And it is generally true. Capital doesn't have allegiances or emotions, generally speaking. It'll go to wherever it's getting the best deal. Investment follows, and people and jobs follow that. You look at all these things and it definitely starts to feel like incompetence. It's definitely reasonable to see how you could perceive it that way. In a way, it seems more like a strategic reshaping of the country's values, as if we're moving from a country and a government that supports independence and growth and aspiration towards dependency on government and services and control of the population. So who is affected by all this? Well, if you're a small business owner, a property investor, ask anyone who lives in Victoria who owns property, a wealthy retiree who has worked hard, saved, done what they were told to do all of their life and now they want to relax, or anyone who just wants to keep more of what they earn. We work hard, we should be able to keep more of it. You need to have incentive for people to go out and work hard. These kinds of people are the target. You're being regulated, you're being taxed, you're being boxed in. Basically, anyone who has done well or is aspiring to do well, the incentive isn't really there to succeed anymore. And whatever incentive is there, you'd have to argue it's being taken away. You take away incentive, people are just going to sit on their ass. They're going to become more dependent on the government. The government's going to become bigger. It's going to become more bloated. It's going to fall into socialism over the longer term if things continue moving in that direction. As a result of this, many Australians are quietly thinking, what if the system isn't broken, but what if it is actually working as designed? Is there an ulterior motive behind this? I'll leave that to you. Is that conspiracy? So what is the way out from all of this? Sad to say, a lot of people are making the decision to move, to leave the country. If that is something that you want to do, there are options for that. You don't have to go down with the ship. There's a growing community of Australians who are getting residency in Asia, setting up offshore companies to pay less tax and have less regulation, and building international lives where they can keep more of what they earn and ultimately regain their freedom. Places like Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, and other places, these countries are offering visas, favourable tax systems, and a better lifestyle at a fraction of the cost. Of course, there are other places you can go outside Asia. I talk about Asia because that is where we operate. And Asia is a really good place to be for an Australian because we're on a similar time zone. So it's very handy, particularly if you're in business and you have customers you have to liaise with back in Australia. So you can live in any of these places. Nowhere's perfect, but on the balance of things, you would have to say, at least the things that we've been talking about in this video, a lot of these issues won't really apply or won't apply nearly as much in countries like this. You can have a much better lifestyle and pay a lot less for it. With those savings, you can invest more, you can grow your business more, you can do nicer things with your free time. It all compounds from there and it all grows over time. You can always move back to Australia at a later date, but the option is there to have a better lifestyle if that's what you want to do. Now, if you have felt the shift in Australia, and I know a lot of you have, most of the Australians we talk to feel that things aren't really going in the right direction there and are making moves to at least, if not make a permanent move, at least just kind of set up a few things overseas in somewhere like Asia so that they have the option to at least spend a portion of the year outside the country or, you know, make it more permanent if they feel that that's going to be better for them. So if you have felt that there is a shift going in Australia, I would say you're probably not imagining it, but I would also say Australia isn't necessarily collapsing, but it is changing. There's no doubt about that. And if you want to get ahead of the change, no matter what we're talking about here, it always pays to be early rather than be late. If you're late, it can be difficult to make these changes. It can be expensive. It might be harder to be mobile with residencies, harder to move money, harder to leave tax systems. This stuff generally gets harder over time. So it generally pays to be early rather than late. I'm not trying to sell you on our services here, but that is basically how it is. That's how it works. You don't need to wait for permission to leave. Well, you might in a few years' time if you want to exit the tax system. That's another issue. You are an individual. You do have the right to give yourself permission to leave, to take control of your own life. This is what we do here at Offshore in Asia. We help freedom-minded individuals, Australians, but also people from all around the world, build global lives, set themselves up in Asia, get a residency, get a bank account, get a new business, set up your investments so you're not going to be taxed too heavily, set up a nice lifestyle. It all comes down to the lifestyle, and being able to have a nice lifestyle, a lot of that comes down to money. So money is important. So if you're interested in that, head over to offshoreinasia.com. You can book in a one-on-one call there if you're serious about building your life beyond the borders of Australia now. You can also send us a contact form there. We've also got a bunch of articles up on our website blog that you might find interesting that will at least help pull back the curtain a little bit and sort of clear up a few issues of what it means to move to Asia. And we'll finish on this. I'll ask you a question. What do you think about this topic of managed decline? Is it a conspiracy theory? Is it a real thing? Or is it somewhere in the middle? Let us know what you think in the comments, and we'll see you later.